The payment receipts had my name on them, but when we showed up, my daughter told me, "You're not invited." I didn't understand what was happening. My hands were full with her gift, a silver-wrapped box containing a necklace that had been in our family for 3 generations. Andrew stood beside me in his freshly pressed navy suit, his silver hair neatly combed. I had spent 2 hours getting ready, a corsage carefully pinned to my lavender dress. We had paid for everything, and now we were being erased. The day Victoria told us we weren't welcome at her wedding. It wasn't in anger or heat. No, it was calculated, cold, like a message from someone at the front desk of a hotel informing you your reservation had been canceled. And that made it worse. "Mom, Dad, you're not invited. This is my day. Please leave." Each word hit me like ice water poured down my back. Not one of them slipped by unnoticed. "Mom, Dad," she said like a stranger calling out to people they didn't know. "You're not invited." She said it clearly, directly, without shame. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't struggling to say it. She meant it. "This is my day," as if the fact that we existed, that we showed up, was an offense. "Please leave." Polite on the surface, but it wasn't kindness. It was dismissal. A clear message. "Go. You're not wanted." My throat went dry. I stood there frozen, holding the silver-wrapped box. Inside was the necklace my grandmother had worn at her wedding in 1938, my mother had worn at hers in 1967, and I had worn when I married Andrew in 1990. The platinum chain with the teardrop pearl pendant had been cleaned and polished just yesterday. I had been excited to give it to Victoria. I imagined her opening it, smiling, maybe even tearing up at the tradition being passed down. She didn't ask what was in the box. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even look at it. Behind her, some guests had turned their heads. Not because they cared, but because we had become a scene. A woman I didn't recognize, probably from Nathan's side, gave me a look I can't forget. A mix of surprise and mild irritation, like she was watching someone get kicked off a bus for not having the right ticket. No one stopped to ask questions. No one said a word, not even Nathan, who stood slightly behind Victoria, his eyes darting between his bride and us. I looked at Victoria, really looked. Her face was calm, not angry, not conflicted, not sad, just blank, completely blank. Like I was a problem she had to solve before getting back to her big moment. The wedding dress she wore wasn't the one we had helped her choose. This was different, sleeker, more modern. She had changed it without telling us. Andrew stood next to me, silent. I saw his hand clench, that quiet tension in his jaw that I knew too well after 35 years of marriage, the kind of stillness he used when he was trying not to show pain. He had spent weeks on the phone sorting the photographer contract. He had paid the deposit for the venue from his own retirement fund. She didn't thank him. Victoria turned to one of her bridesmaids, Sophia, I think her name was, and whispered something. They both glanced at us and then laughed. That sound, her laughing after pushing us away, stuck in my ears. It wasn't just disrespect. It wasn't just selfishness. It was cruelty, cold and practiced. "Victoria," Andrew finally spoke, his voice steady but tight. "We don't understand. We're your parents." "And I'm getting married," she replied, checking her watch. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I need to finish getting ready." She turned to Nathan. "Can you make sure they leave? I need to check on the flower arrangements." Nathan looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. "Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, I'm sorry, but maybe it's best if you—" "Don't," Andrew cut him off. "Don't apologize for her." I finally found my voice. "Victoria, why we've spent months planning this with you. We've paid for—" "That was your choice," she said, her tone suddenly sharp. "I never asked you to take over everything." Take over. We had only done what she asked. Each check written, each call made, was at her request. "You know what?" I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "You're right. This is your day, and we're leaving." Andrew looked at me, startled. Then understanding passed between us, the kind that only happens after decades together. He nodded once, took my arm, and we turned to leave. We walked out quietly with heads held high, past the floral arch we had paid for white roses and lilies, just as Victoria had wanted, past the catering van from Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant we had chosen together 6 months ago, past the rows of white chairs we had selected, each with a small bouquet tied with silver ribbon. We got into our car, Andrew sliding behind the wheel. I held the silver box in my lap, staring at it for a long time. I didn't cry, not yet. "She threw us away," I said, barely above a whisper. Andrew sat back in the seat, his hands still on the wheel, though the engine wasn't running. "We raised a princess and got an ice queen." My heart felt like it cracked down the middle, but I nodded. The truth often hurts before it heals. As Andrew drove away from the vineyard where our daughter was about to get married without us, the silence in the car was heavy. It wasn't the comfortable silence we'd developed over our years together. This was the kind of silence that made it hard to breathe. I thought about the skipped birthdays, the quick replies to our messages, the times Victoria said she was too busy to visit, the way she said, "We just need space right now," when we asked if we could stop by their apartment. She had been distancing herself for a while. We didn't want to admit it. "She told her friends we insisted on paying," I said suddenly, breaking the silence. "We didn't. We offered with love." Andrew nodded, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Remember when she didn't invite you to her dress fitting?" The memory stung. 3 months ago, Victoria had called to tell me about the appointment. "It'll be tight, Mom, just me and Sophia. I'll send you photos." She never did. I found out later that Nathan's mother had been there too. I told myself it was just wedding stress, that Victoria was overwhelmed with planning, that I shouldn't take it personally. A week later, she forwarded us the venue confirmation email. "We picked this one. Hope you're okay with it." We weren't included in the decision. We were simply informed. The florist called me for final approval on the arrangements. I paid the invoice quietly, not wanting to stress Victoria out more than she already was. "Mom, don't stress me," she said when I asked about seeing the centerpiece mock-ups. "I just want to enjoy this," and I let it go. Like I let everything go because I thought it was what a mother does. I thought if I just gave enough time, money, love, she would see how much we cared, how much we wanted to be part of her life. "Stop the car," I said suddenly. "Where?" Andrew asked, already signaling to pull over. "Anywhere with Wi-Fi." He nodded, understanding immediately. He turned off the highway, pulled into a small roadside cafe called Mary's Diner. We walked inside, sat down at a small booth, and ordered 2 coffees we didn't really want. The wedding was still happening. The guests were still eating. The music still played. The photos were being taken. But not for long. We still had control. Our names were on the contracts. The payments were pending. We had options. I pulled out my phone and opened my email, finding the contact for the venue coordinator. Andrew already had his phone to his ear. "Yes. Hello? This is Andrew Sullivan. I'm calling about the Reynolds-Sullivan wedding happening right now." He paused. "Yes, that's correct. I need to speak with someone about canceling the remainder of the event." The person on the other end must have been shocked because Andrew had to repeat himself. "I understand it's unusual, but I'm the one who signed the contract. I'm the one who's paying." Another pause. "No, this isn't a joke, and I'd appreciate it if you could connect me with your manager immediately." While Andrew handled the venue, I called the florist, then the decorator, the caterer, the music coordinator. "Yes, I understand the event is already happening," I said to the caterer, my voice calm despite the storm inside me. "But I'm the one paying. Cancel it." "Yes, I understand the timing," I said to the DJ company. "Yes, I'm aware it will cause disruption." I explained to the wedding coordinator, no yelling, no threats, just calm, cold clarity. She had thrown us away. So, we took our gift with us. Within the hour, calls and messages started flooding in. Victoria first, then Nathan, then his parents. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. The wound was too fresh. The betrayal too deep. As we sat at that small table in Mary's diner, drinking cold coffee and making quiet calls, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not bitterness, just finality. She had chosen to cut us out. So, we stepped all the way out, and she would feel the loss because without us there would be no music, no dinner, no flowers, no celebration. She wanted us invisible. Fine. Then everything we gave her would disappear, too. We drove home in silence. Not the kind of silence that comforts, but the kind that sinks into your bones. The road stretched long and the sky, once bright with wedding day promise, turned a pale gray. I stared out the window, not really seeing anything. It wasn't just what Victoria did today. It was everything that came before it. Everything we ignored, forgave, or explained away. Each mile back to our house brought memories sharper than the last. They kept stacking one on top of the other until I couldn't breathe. I remembered when Victoria was 16 and we bought her first car. Not new, but safe and reliable, a blue Honda Civic with low mileage. We'd saved for months to afford it. She didn't say thank you then either. Just took the keys and drove off to her friend's house, muttering, "I didn't ask for a used one." Andrew had laughed it off. I told myself she'd appreciate it later. She never did. Then there was college. We co-signed her student loans, paid her rent the first year, sent care packages with handwritten notes and homemade cookies. She called when she needed something, money for books, help with a paper, advice on dealing with a difficult roommate, but rarely just to talk. When she graduated from Cornell with her business degree, she invited us to the ceremony. We sat in the audience, bursting with pride. Afterward, she sat with her friends, took pictures with Nathan's family they'd been dating since sophomore year. We had to ask a stranger to take one photo of the three of us, and still we smiled and told ourselves it was fine. She was growing up, finding her independence. We told ourselves it was her age, that she'd mature, but it didn't stop. When she got her first job at a marketing firm in the city, we helped her move, bought her new furniture, spent 2 weekends setting up her apartment. She said thanks once, no hug, no card, just left to meet a friend for dinner while we finished assembling her bookshelf. The signs were there. Years of small dismissals, quiet rejections, subtle erasure. But we kept showing up because that's what parents do, right? We give, we stay, we hope. I looked at Andrew as he drove. His face was unreadable, but I saw the tightness in his jaw, the way his fingers tapped the steering wheel. He felt it, too, the years, the hurt, all of it rising now that the curtain had been pulled back. When we got home, I didn't even go inside right away. I sat on the porch holding the silver-wrapped box. That necklace had been my mother's. She wore it at her wedding. I had worn it at mine. Victoria had once played with it as a child, spinning in front of the mirror, saying, "I want this when I get married." She didn't even glance at the box today. Inside. I heard Andrew on the phone canceling payments. His voice was calm but sharp. I knew that tone. It only came out when he'd reached a breaking point. I finally went inside, set the box on the kitchen table, sat down across from it like it was a person I needed to confront. Then I opened my laptop, emails, dozens of them, all the wedding planning we had been looped into, then slowly pushed out of, "We decided to go with a different cake vendor. Can you just send the deposit directly to the planner? It'll be easier." We moved the rehearsal to Friday afternoon. Hope that still works for you. Hope. They always hoped, but never asked. Victoria and Nathan had positioned us as assistants, support staff, never family. The longer I read, the more it became clear we were only invited to contribute, not to be part of it. I scrolled through my texts with Victoria. Short answers, delayed responses, messages left unread. One stood out. Me. "Are you free this weekend? Would love to have lunch. Just us." Her. "Can't. Wedding errands. Maybe another time." Another time never came, and yet I kept trying. The resentment was no longer a sharp sting. It was steady, a pulse beneath everything I did. I made dinner that night on autopilot, stirred the sauce, set the table, washed my hands twice because I forgot I already had. Andrew didn't say much. We were both trying to process what we'd allowed. Not just today, but for years. After we ate, he pulled out the box with the wedding invoices. Laid them out one by one. Venue $15,000 still owed. Florist, $3,000 deposit made. $4,500 balance unpaid. Photographer, $2,500 paid. $2,500 final payment due this week. Band $3,000 half paid. $3,000 pending. She never confirmed the final guest count with the caterer. He said they might not even have enough food. I stared at the papers, each line a reminder of what we gave and how little it mattered. It wasn't just about money. It was the absence of care. The decision to exclude us from the moment she had claimed as her own after we built it. Later that evening, the calls started. Unknown number, voicemail, then her number, Victoria. I didn't answer. Let it ring. Then she texted, "What is going on? Why is everything shutting down?" I read the message 3 times. She didn't say, "Why did you leave?" or "I'm sorry." She asked why her event was falling apart. No acknowledgement of what she did. No remorse, just panic over the consequences. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, another message. "Did you cancel everything? That's so cruel. How could you ruin the most important day of my life?" I stared at the screen. The most important day of her life. Ours didn't matter. Our place didn't matter. I typed one sentence. "You told us we weren't invited, so we left." And that was it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of years of choices, of the slow erosion of something we didn't want to admit had been breaking. Victoria made her choice. We were making ours. And it started with finally stepping back from a person who only called when she needed something. That night, I didn't sleep much, but for once, it wasn't because I was worried about Victoria. It was because I finally understood the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it, and you don't go back. The next morning, I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the sun rise without a trace of warmth. Andrew came in, poured a cup, and sat across from me without a word. We didn't need words. We were both thinking the same thing. We were done begging to be included. We were done explaining why we mattered. A few more texts arrived that day from Victoria's friends, from Nathan's parents, all asking why we acted out. They didn't ask what Victoria had said. They didn't know we were told to leave. She hadn't told them. She had painted us as difficult, as dramatic, as the villains in her story. It didn't matter. We had the receipts, the contracts, the records, and the truth. And that was enough because for the first time we were choosing ourselves. And it felt like a door closing softly, not with anger but with peace. I didn't answer the phone for 3 days. Every call, every text, every message that buzzed across the screen. I let them sit. Not because I didn't see them, but because I needed to sit with myself first. I had to look at the reality I had denied for too long. I spent the 3rd day going through old folders in the hall closet contracts, bank transfers, emails I had printed. I opened an envelope containing our last will and testament, still naming Victoria as our sole beneficiary. I stared at it for a long time. What had we done? We'd spent decades giving. And for what? To be told we weren't welcome at the very event we funded, I went into the living room. Andrew was watching the news. Though he wasn't really watching, I handed him the envelope. "We need to talk to someone," I said. He didn't hesitate. He just nodded. That afternoon, we made an appointment with a financial planner, not our usual one. Someone new. Someone with no ties to Victoria. I wanted someone who would look at our accounts like we were just names and numbers, not a family on the edge of something irreversible. At the office, we explained our situation carefully. Not all the emotions, not the humiliation, just the facts. We paid for a wedding we weren't allowed to attend. We were removed from the event, but still financially bound to it. We want to secure our assets going forward. The financial planner, Ms. Donovan, blinked. "And you want to know how to secure your assets going forward?" "That," I said. "And how to limit access?" He asked about joint accounts. About any shared financial documents. Did Victoria have power of attorney? Was she a signatory on any accounts? She doesn't have access, I said. Not directly. But she's persuasive, Andrew added. She knows how to make it seem like an emergency. Mr. Donovan smiled. Polite but not warm. He had heard this before. We weren't the first parents to realize we'd been treated like an ATM. We left with a folder of options trust structures, emergency freezes, new wills, all the tools people don't think they need until they're too deep in the guilt of loving someone who doesn't appreciate it. That night, while I folded laundry, a memory hit me so hard I dropped a towel. I was 19. My father had just remarried. One evening, I showed up at his house without calling first. His new wife answered the door. He stood behind her. He didn't invite me in. He said, "You should have called first. This is our space now." That sting, that shame. I hadn't felt it in years, but I felt it again when Victoria used those same words. This is my day. You're not invited. And just like that, I was back on that doorstep, unwanted. But then something strange happened. I began to feel angry, not just hurt, and that was new. The next morning, I sat down with my laptop and opened Victoria's social media. There it was. Photos from what was left of the wedding. Captions filled with phrases like resilient love, an unshakable bond. Not one mention of us. A photo of her and Nathan's parents. Smiling, laughing. I looked closer. That dress, it was altered. Not the one she chose with me initially. The one we paid for had been returned. I remembered her saying it didn't fit the theme. Another picture, her and Nathan standing beside a simple arch. Not the floral arch we ordered. That must have been taken down when the florist left. And still, she pretended it all went smoothly. My chest tightened. She didn't just exclude us. She erased us. My phone buzzed. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Is this Patricia Sullivan, Victoria's mother? Yes, I answered, curiosity getting the better of me. Hi, my name is Jessica. I work for Bella Bloom's events. We handled the floral arrangements at your daughter's wedding. We received a partial cancellation, then had to stop mid-preparation. I just wanted to clarify what to invoice. Partial cancellation. I realized Victoria must have tried to salvage the wedding, tried to rebook things behind our backs after we pulled the payments, likely called the vendors in a panic. Send the invoice to me directly, I said. We'll settle the remaining cancellation fees. Nothing more. Understood. Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan. I hung up. Another lie. Another attempt to work around us. Not with us. I pulled out the financial planner's folder again. This time I read everything. Trusts, transfers, contingencies. Andrew came in from mowing the lawn. I showed him the page I'd bookmarked. I want to do it. All of it. Are you sure? He asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. We spent 28 years thinking she'd come around. He didn't argue. By the end of the week, we had met with a lawyer, set up new documentation, removed Victoria from automatic inheritance, changed access to all joint accounts. The lawyer was sharp, kind, but focused. You don't have to justify this, she said. You're protecting yourselves. That's what responsible people do. We also asked about future protections, a clause for any attempt at manipulation or pressure. Clear boundaries. She helped us create them. That night, Victoria finally called again. I answered. Hi, Mom. Just hearing her voice made something cold rise in me. Hi. I feel like everything spiraled out of control. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed the day to be perfect. I waited. I thought you understood how much pressure I was under. You know how weddings are? Blame shifting. Classic Victoria. You told us to leave, I said simply. I didn't mean it like that. You said we weren't invited. Silence. Then, can we just move past this? No, I said. What do you mean? I mean, we're not going to pretend it didn't happen, and we're not going back to how things were. She started crying. Tears after everything. I don't know what else to say. You said enough. You made your choice. Now we're making ours. I could have yelled. I could have screamed all the things she had taken from us, the way she had used our love like a credit line. But I chose to remain calm because sometimes silence is the sharpest answer. I hung up. It was quiet afterward, but it was the right kind of quiet because we were finally free from the loop where love meant sacrifice and silence. Now it meant boundaries and consequences, and something in me finally began to heal. By the following Monday, something in me had shifted. I didn't announce it. I didn't cry about it. I didn't even bring it up over breakfast. I just opened my laptop, clicked through my saved folders, and began putting things in motion. The first thing I did was contact the lawyer again. I wanted every document updated, signed, notarized, and legally sealed. Victoria was no longer the default heir. Not out of spite, out of necessity. We weren't punishing her. We were protecting ourselves. The calm that settled over me during this process was unfamiliar, but welcome. For the first time in years, I didn't feel desperate to fix everything. I didn't feel like I had to patch things up before they fell apart. They had already fallen apart, and we were still standing. The lawyer called to confirm everything had gone through. "It's all finalized," she said. "You've secured everything." I thanked her and hung up. My hand hovered over the phone for a moment. No shaking, no second guessing. Later that day, I emailed our bank. I requested that all joint accounts with our daughter be reviewed. No more emergency transfers. No more requests that came at midnight with urgent messages. "Mom, I need this for rent. I'll pay you back next month." We switched banks altogether the following week. Clean slate. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the pattern. Every time Victoria had needed something, we had responded like trained reflexes. From the time she was 15 and wanted that designer dress for prom, everyone else is wearing something nice. I don't want to look poor, to just 2 months ago when she asked us to cover the extra fees for the wedding planner she had changed without telling us. Every time she got what she wanted, and every time she gave a little less of herself back. So now we were drawing the line. Then the storm hit. When Victoria found out about the legal changes, the calls didn't just come from her, they came from everyone. "How could you?" she screamed over voicemail. "You just cut me out like I'm nothing after everything I've been through. You think this is fair? You blindsided me. I didn't even get a conversation. Just lawyers and papers." Her voice cracked, but it wasn't sadness. It was fury. The next day, Nathan called. This time his tone had changed. "This is vindictive," he said flatly. "You're causing irreparable damage. Don't think this won't affect your future." Then came the texts. Long, angry paragraphs from Victoria. "You always made me feel like I owed you everything. Maybe this is what you wanted to control me until the very end. I'm your daughter, not your employee. You act like love should come with contracts." Then a group chat sprang up. Extended family, mutual friends, some names I hadn't seen in years. Somehow she had pulled them in. "We heard what happened. This is wrong. You're still her parents." She was emotional. "But this is too far. Undo it. Be the bigger person." And then she said something I'll never forget. "You've always been selfish. This just proves it." That word hit harder than any scream. Selfish. After decades of giving, after covering rent, tuition, phone bills, therapy sessions, wedding bills, selfish. I laughed. For the first time in days, I laughed out loud. It wasn't joy. It was disbelief, because only someone who had never really seen me could call me that. But the most unexpected thing happened a week later. A message from my younger sister. "Rebecca," someone I hadn't spoken to deeply in months. "I saw what Victoria posted. I'm sorry, but I get it now. I always thought you were overprotective. Now I see you were just always cleaning up after her. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." For once, someone saw it. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. I made a list of everything Victoria still had from us. Gifts, accounts, shared services. I started removing our names. unsubscribing, disconnecting. She might not have noticed yet, but the ties were being cut, not out of vengeance, out of clarity. That week, I also made an appointment with Dr. Eleanor Grant, a therapist, someone to talk to, not about Victoria, but about how I had allowed myself to disappear into motherhood so completely that I didn't see it happening. She asked me a question during our second session that stopped me cold. What would your life have looked like if you hadn't been a parent? I had no answer because for 30 years that had been my identity provider, peacemaker, background character in someone else's life story. Now I had to find my own. Friday evening. The phone rang. Not Victoria this time, Nathan. I debated answering, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Mrs. Sullivan? It's Nathan. Yes, he hesitated. I just wanted to check in. Victoria's been going through a tough time. I let the silence stretch. She misses you, he added. Does she? I said. No malice, just truth. I think things just got emotional that day. She regrets how it happened. Regret is easy, I said. Change is harder. He cleared his throat. Would you consider talking to her again? Maybe coming over for dinner? No pressure. Just try again. I almost said yes, out of habit, out of that ingrained sense that we must always be the ones to fix it. But I didn't. No, I said gently. We're not coming over. He didn't argue. He just said, I understand, and hung up. That night, I printed out a copy of the new trust documents and placed them in our safe. I included a letter explaining our decisions, not to justify, just to record. By the weekend, more messages poured in. One friend of Victoria's wrote, I always admired your family. I don't understand why you'd take this route, another said. She's devastated. She feels abandoned. But not one asked what we felt. Not one asked what it was like to be told to leave your own child's wedding, to be erased from a moment you paid for, built up, held together. The final straw came when Victoria sent a voicemail I'll never forget. You broke me, she said, and you'll regret this one day. I played it twice, then deleted it. The week ended with a knock on the door. I opened it to find a delivery, a large envelope. Inside, a formal invitation to a reconciliation dinner at a restaurant we once loved, with a handwritten note. Let's talk. Let's fix this. Love, Victoria. I read it twice, and then I placed it in the same folder as the old family photo, not to attend, but to remember the moment I chose peace over performance, and I didn't go. During this time, what I didn't know was that Victoria was facing her own pressures. While she never told us directly, I later pieced it together from social media and comments from mutual friends. She was under tremendous pressure from Nathan's wealthy family to have a picture-perfect wedding. His mother, Diane Reynolds, was particularly demanding, insisting on certain traditions and appearances that matched their social standing. Nathan's family had connections in the marketing industry where Victoria worked, and there was an implied expectation that their wedding would be a networking event as much as a celebration. Victoria, always anxious about her professional image, had felt caught between her ambitions and her relationship with us. This didn't excuse her behavior, but it added a dimension I hadn't considered. She was caught in a web of expectations from Nathan's family, her social circle, and her own insecurities. And instead of being honest with us, she had chosen to push us away. But understanding wasn't the same as accepting. We maintained our decision. The boundaries remained firm. It started with a silence I didn't expect. After I ignored the invitation to the reconciliation dinner, days went by without a word from Victoria. I thought maybe, just maybe, she understood that my quiet refusal had made more noise than any angry confrontation ever could. But I was wrong. A week later, the retaliation began. First, she posted a photo of her and Nathan at the restaurant captioned, Even when your own family gives up on you, love finds a way. People flooded the comments. You deserve better. Some parents don't appreciate what they have. You're so strong. I watched as the narrative changed, not to the truth, but to a version of it that cast me as the villain. That blamed me for protecting myself. Then came the private messages from a former neighbor. Hey, just saw Victoria's post. Are you two okay? From an old coworker. Sorry to intrude, but I hope you're hanging in there. Family stuff is hard. From my cousin. Can you just tell your side because this looks bad? I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I poured myself some tea, sat by the window, and stared into the garden. The roses I'd planted last spring were finally blooming. Red, resilient, unapologetic. That day, I took out the folder where I'd placed Victoria's reconciliation note, the wedding receipts, the trust documents, everything. I flipped through each page slowly, not with sadness anymore, but with clarity. Every dollar we spent, every word we weren't allowed to say, every hug we forced ourselves to give when our arms felt empty. I remembered her 6th birthday when she ran into my arms after we surprised her with a pony ride at Riverside Park. I remember the night she broke her arm falling from the tree house Andrew built, and I stayed awake for 48 hours by her hospital bed. I remember the time she failed her driving test and cried in the car for an hour while I held her hand, promising her that next time would be better. I had always been there, but at some point, I stopped being a person to her. I became a service, and when services stop, people complain. The phone rang again. Nathan. This time I let it go to voicemail. He sounded tired. Patricia. Andrew, we didn't think you'd actually go through with all of this. Victoria's not doing well. She's angry. Yes, but also confused. She's used to you fixing things. She's used to you showing up. I stopped the message there. I didn't need to hear the rest. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to send, just for me. I wrote down everything I never said out loud. About how it felt to be left out of your only child's wedding. About the way I'd stopped recognizing my own voice because it was always drowned out by other people's needs. About how painful it was to realize that love, when taken for granted, can become invisible. I ended it with one line. I love you, but I love myself now, too. Then I folded it and tucked it into the back of the folder. The next day, we received a formal letter from Victoria's lawyer, a request for mediation, financial concerns. She wanted access to a fund we had once created for her education, but never closed. My hands shook as I read it. Not with fear, with exhaustion. She was still asking, still reaching, still expecting. That afternoon, I went to the bank and permanently closed the account. I didn't leave a note. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak for me. A few days later, Andrew and I went out for breakfast at Maple Street Cafe. It was quiet, simple. We split a plate of blueberry pancakes and talked about painting the kitchen. For the first time in months, we didn't talk about Victoria, and it felt okay. Then, as we walked back to the car, a woman approached me, someone I didn't recognize. Are you Patricia Sullivan? I paused. Yes. I just wanted to say I read what you wrote in that support forum, and then I read what your daughter posted. Your story made me rethink a lot of things with my own daughter. Thank you for being brave. I nodded, stunned. I hadn't posted anything public, just a short reflection in a private forum for parents navigating difficult relationships with adult children. But it reached someone. That night, I sat on the porch, the folder beside me. I didn't cry. I didn't plan. I just breathed. And I realized I didn't need Victoria to apologize anymore. She may never understand what she did. She may always believe her version of the story, but I had stepped out of the role I was never meant to live in forever. I was no longer the fixer, no longer the bank, no longer the silence. Just me standing, breathing, living. During my sessions with Dr. Grant, I began to explore who I was beyond motherhood. I had been a nurse for 30 years before retiring 5 years ago. I had helped deliver babies, comforted the dying, held the hands of the terrified. Yet somehow, I had allowed my identity to be consumed by Victoria's needs. Tell me about Patricia, Dr. Grant said one day. Not the mother, not the wife, just Patricia. I struggled at first. I like gardening. I offered lamely. What else? I used to paint watercolors before Victoria was born. Why did you stop? No time, I said automatically. But that wasn't entirely true. No. Space. I gave up the spare room for Victoria's playroom. Never set it back up. Oh, would you like to paint again? The question was so simple, yet it opened something in me. Could I reclaim that part of myself that weekend? I went to an art supply store and bought watercolors, brushes, and paper. I set up a small corner in our bedroom. It wasn't a studio, but it was mine. When I put brush to paper for the first time in almost 30 years, my hand trembled. The colors ran together, forming shapes I hadn't intended, but it was beautiful in its own way, like me imperfect, still finding form, but present. 2 weeks after receiving Victoria's invitation to the reconciliation dinner, which I hadn't responded to, I received another overture. This time, it was a small package delivered to our door. Inside was a framed photo of Victoria as a child, sitting on my lap as I read her a story. Attached was a note. Remember when things were simple, I miss you. Mom, please call me. I placed the frame on the mantel but didn't call. I wasn't ready. The photo captured a moment of pure connection before expectations, before disappointment, before hurt. But it also reminded me of how far we'd drifted from that innocence. That evening, Andrew found me staring at the photo. You okay? He asked, placing a hand on my shoulder. I don't know what I want, I admitted. Part of me wants to call her. Part of me is afraid nothing's really changed. You don't have to decide today, he said. You're allowed to take time. Time. Such a simple gift, yet one I'd rarely given myself. The next morning, I checked Victoria's social media again. She had posted a photo of the same framed picture she'd sent me, with the caption, "Some relationships are worth fighting for, even when they break your heart." The comments were supportive, but different from before. Less about vilifying us, more about encouraging reconciliation. The narrative was shifting again. Victoria was positioning herself as the one extending the olive branch. Part of me was irritated by the performance of it all, the public display of private pain. But another part recognized that this might be the only way Victoria knew how to communicate. Her generation lived their lives online. Emotions weren't real unless they were shared, validated by likes and comments. Later that day, Rebecca called. Have you seen Victoria's latest post? She asked. Yes. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. She came to see me yesterday. This surprised me. Rebecca and Victoria had never been particularly close. What did she want? To talk about you? Mostly. She wanted to know if I thought you'd ever forgive her. And what did you say? I told her that wasn't the right question. The right question is whether she understands what she did wrong. Does she? Rebecca sighed. I'm not sure. She keeps saying she was under pressure, that Nathan's family had expectations, that she got caught up in it all. That's not understanding. That's excusing. I know. I told her that. After we hung up, I found myself in front of my small painting corner. I picked up a brush and began mixing colors, deep blues and purples, the colors of twilight. As I painted, I thought about forgiveness, not the kind that erases consequences, but the kind that allows for peace. Could I find that? Did I want to? The formal letter from Victoria's lawyer was followed by another, more aggressive one, demanding access to the education fund we'd closed. We forwarded it to our lawyer, who responded with a simple, factual letter stating that the account had been voluntary, had fulfilled its purpose, and had been legally closed. A week later, we received a notification that Victoria had filed a complaint with the State Bar Association against our lawyer, claiming unethical practices. The complaint was quickly dismissed as baseless, but it showed how far Victoria was willing to go. When I told Dr. Grant about this, she asked, "What does this tell you?" That she's desperate, I replied. Or vindictive, or both. And how does that affect your willingness to reconcile? I thought for a moment. It makes me less willing. This isn't someone who wants to make amends. This is someone who wants to win. Dr. Grant nodded. And what do you want? Patricia. Peace, I said immediately. I want peace. Then that's your answer. That evening, Victoria called again. This time, I answered. Mom, she said, sounding surprised that I'd picked up. Thank you for answering. What do you need? Victoria. I wanted to talk. Did you get my gift? The photo. I did. And it's a beautiful memory. She seemed frustrated by my neutral response. Mom, I've been trying to reach out. I sent the invitation. The photo. I've been posting about how much I miss you. I've seen. Then why won't you respond? Why won't you meet me halfway? I took a deep breath. Because this isn't about halfway, Victoria. This isn't a negotiation. This is about understanding. I understand I was stressed about the wedding. I made a mistake. No, I said quietly. You made a choice. You chose to tell your parents, who supported you and paid for your wedding, that they weren't invited. That wasn't stress. That was cruelty. She was silent. And now, instead of truly reflecting on that, you're trying to force your way back in through social media, through lawyers, through gifts designed to make me feel guilty. That's not fair, she protested. What's not fair is expecting me to pretend it didn't happen. What's not fair is thinking that a framed photo erases what you did. So you'll never forgive me, is that it? Her voice cracked. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Victoria. Trust is, and trust requires understanding, remorse, and change, not pressure. After we hung up, I felt drained but clearer than I had in weeks. I wasn't closing the door forever, but I wasn't leaving it wide open either. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I was setting the terms. Later that week, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived from Nathan, not Victoria. Not their lawyer, just Nathan. Unlike the formal invitations and legal notices, this was handwritten on plain paper. Dear Patricia and Andrew, I'm writing to you directly, without Victoria's knowledge. What happened at our wedding was wrong. I should have spoken up when Victoria told you to leave, but I didn't. I was caught between loyalty to her and knowing that what she was doing was cruel. The truth is, Victoria has been struggling with intense pressure from my family. My parents have certain expectations, especially my mother, and Victoria felt she had to choose between pleasing them and honoring you. She chose wrong. I'm not excusing what she did, but I want you to know that she does regret it, even if she struggles to admit it fully. Her pride and her fear are getting in the way of genuine reconciliation. I care about Victoria, and I can see that this rift is hurting her deeply. But more than that, I believe in doing what's right. What happened to you was wrong. I don't expect this letter to change anything immediately, but I hope it might be a small step toward understanding. Respectfully, Nathan. I showed the letter to Andrew. He read it silently, then handed it back. What do you think? I asked. I think it's the first honest thing anyone said to us since the wedding. I nodded. Me too. The letter from Nathan sat on my desk for days. I read it several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Was it another attempt at manipulation? This time using Nathan as the reasonable party? Or was it genuinely his independent effort to bridge the gap either way? It had accomplished one thing. It had made Victoria human again in my eyes. Not just the villain of my story, but a complex person navigating her own pressures and failures. It didn't excuse what she did, but it helped me see her more clearly. I continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Grant, painting in my small corner and tending to my garden. The roses were in full bloom now, their fragrance filling the air each morning as I had my coffee on the porch. One Saturday, Andrew and I decided to redecorate the guest room, the room that had once been Victoria's. We chose a soft sage green for the walls, installed bookshelves, and moved my painting supplies from our bedroom to a proper desk by the window. It became a space for creativity, for peace, for me. As we worked, we talked about the future, about travel plans we'd postponed, about the retirement community our friends had moved to in Arizona, about possibilities that had nothing to do with Victoria or her needs. Maybe we should join that community gardening project, Andrew suggested as he helped me arrange my paints on the new desk. The one at the community center. You hate gardening, I reminded him. He smiled. But I love seeing you happy, and you light up when you talk about your roses. That night, after a simple dinner, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. My phone buzzed with a text. Victoria. Mom, Dad, I know I've handled this all wrong. I'm sorry. Can we meet? Just to talk. No lawyers. No social media. No pressure. Just us. I showed it to Andrew. He squeezed my hand. Your call. I thought about it for a long time. Was I ready? Would it help or hurt? What did I want from such a meeting? Finally, I typed a reply. Victoria, we're willing to meet, but there are conditions. No manipulation, no blame shifting, no pressure, just honest conversation. Let us know when you're ready for that kind of meeting. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself. Her reply came almost immediately. I'm ready. When and where? We arranged to meet the following Sunday at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our house and her apartment. I spent the days leading up to it preparing myself emotionally. I talked it through with Dr. Grant, painted a series of small abstract pieces expressing my feelings, and wrote out what I wanted to say. The day arrived. Andrew and I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. I felt surprisingly calm. We had agreed that I would take the lead, but he would be there for support. Victoria arrived precisely on time. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. She sat down across from us, hands clasped tightly on the table. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I nodded. Thank you for asking. An awkward silence fell. She broke it first. I don't know where to start. Start with why, I suggested. Why did you tell us to leave your wedding? She looked down at her hands. It wasn't planned. When I saw you there, with the gift, looking so expectant, I panicked. Diane Nathan's mother had been making comments all morning about how the wedding needed to be just so for their family connections. I felt pulled in too many directions. So you chose to push us away. I made a terrible choice, she admitted. I thought I could compartmentalize my career connections through Nathan's family, my personal life with you, but it all got tangled, and when the moment came, I chose wrong. You did, I agreed. And then you tried to manipulate your way back in without acknowledging the hurt you caused. She flinched but didn't deny it. I'm used to you fixing everything, she said quietly. Even when I mess up, you've always been there to make it right. That was my mistake, I told her. I should have let you face consequences long ago. Maybe then you would have learned that relationships require care, not just convenience. For the first time, tears welled in her eyes, not the manipulative tears from our phone call, but genuine ones. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. You can't fix it, I said gently. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be rebuilt, slowly, differently. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Victoria spoke about the pressure she felt from Nathan's family, her anxiety about her career, her complicated feelings about relying on us financially while resenting the implied obligation. Andrew talked about his hurt, his disappointment, his struggle to understand how she could treat us so callously. I spoke about boundaries, about love that doesn't demand sacrifice, about my journey to rediscover myself beyond motherhood. It wasn't a perfect conversation. Victoria still slipped into defensiveness at times. I still felt anger bubble up occasionally, but it was honest in a way we hadn't been with each other in years. As we prepared to leave, Victoria asked, "What happens now?" "Now we take small steps," I said. "No grand gestures, no dramatic reconciliations, just small, consistent steps toward a new kind of relationship." "Like what?" "Like honest conversations, like respect for boundaries, like getting to know each other as the people we are now, not the people we were. She nodded, uncertainty in her eyes. Can I call you next week? Yes, I said. You can call? As we walked to our car, Andrew took my hand. You okay? I think so, I said. It's a beginning, not the one I expected, but a beginning. In the weeks that followed, Victoria did call. Our conversations were brief at first, somewhat awkward, but gradually became more natural. She respected our boundaries, no financial requests, no pressure to go back to normal. She sent a proper written apology to our lawyer for the baseless complaint. She and Nathan came for dinner one evening. It was tense at times, but civil. Nathan thanked us privately for being willing to try again. Victoria admired my paintings, seeming genuinely surprised by this new aspect of my identity. I continued with my therapy, my painting, my gardening. Andrew and I joined the Community Garden Project, where I met Margaret Wilson, a retired art teacher who encouraged me to display my watercolors at the local senior center's art show. To my surprise, I sold 3 paintings. Life settled into a new pattern, one where Victoria was present but not central, where I had interests and relationships beyond family, where boundaries were clear and respected. One afternoon, as I sat painting in what was now officially my studio, I realized something profound. The pain of Victoria's rejection at the wedding had transformed into something unexpected: freedom. Freedom from the exhausting cycle of giving without limit. Freedom from the fear of disapproval. Freedom to be Patricia, not just Victoria's mother. The silver-wrapped box with the family necklace still sat in my drawer. Perhaps one day, if Victoria truly changed, I might offer it again, or perhaps I would wear it myself to the next art show, reclaiming its meaning for my own life. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors I'd try to capture tomorrow. Andrew joined me, newspaper in hand. Happy? He asked. I considered the question carefully. Was I happy? After everything that had happened, I'm at peace, I answered, and that's better than happiness. He nodded, understanding. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, you're not alone. And if you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, maybe it's time to let your silence speak. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is finally choosing yourself.